Welcome to Igniting Growth Through Strategic Planning and Cross-Functional Harmony. I'm Hillman Sori. I'm the co-founder of Coach CRM. I'm also the co-founder of Closed Loop and a partner in 212 Angels. And today I'm joined by Howard Brown from Revenue IO and Sam Clemens from Reprise. Welcome, gentlemen.
Great to be here.
Sam, why don't you share a little bit about who you are and what Reprise does?
Sure. I'm a startup product guy turned startup CEO. My current startup, as you mentioned, is Reprise. We're a growth stage company. We have a platform for sales teams, which is relevant for all of us here, to make and manage their own demos, product demos, independent of needing an engineering team. In the past, I've worn 3 hats. As an operator, that's the first hat. The second hat I've occasionally worn as an investor, most recently with Accomplice VC as a seed stage fund out of Boston. And then the third hat I've occasionally worn is as a professor at Harvard B School, teaching the startup class.
It's very Dr. Seuss-like. Lots of hats you're wearing there, Sam. Thanks for joining. Howard, tell us a little bit about yourself and about Revenue IO.
Sure. I'm Howard Brown. I'm CEO and founder of Revenue.io. I am a 3-time founder. I've had 2 exits to publicly traded companies. I'm a former clinical psychologist, and I love studying communication. Revenue.io is a revenue engagement platform that uses AI. We've been studying communication and conversations for the past 10 years. We have billions of conversations, and those help sales teams execute and engage with their prospects and customers to better results.
I love it. Thank you. So both of you have built companies that are based upon a lot of the tactical execution that's critically necessary for salespeople to be able to convert conversations to revenue, demos to revenue throughout the sales cycle. And we're tasked here with talking a little bit about how igniting growth can happen through this thing called strategic planning. And, you know, Sam, you've been on the VC side of this. How often have you got founders coming to you going, here's my strategic plan? And that being the catalyst for how you decide, yeah, this is where I'm going to put my money.
If it's happened yet, I'm not aware of it.
How about you, Howard? Is this something that you're sitting there thinking with those encyclopedias behind you, trying to figure out your 5-year plan?
I think, look, I think it's, if you don't plan, it's hard to get to where you want to be. So planning is critical. Execution is just as critical. So I'm looking forward to talking about strategic planning.
Well, you know, I think you kind of paraphrased Yogi Berra there. What is his saying? That if you don't know where you're going, you might end up somewhere else, right?
You probably said it more eloquently.
Yeah. So in the spirit of that, what are we talking about in 2023? You know, what are we talking about with respect to strategic planning? What does that look like for a sales organization? Howard, how would you envision the elements that come together as part of a strategic plan that would effectively help to ignite growth for, let's pick a company size. Let's call it a growth company, Series B.
Yeah. So I think it's critical to outline, first of all, does whatever you're offering align to what the organization you're targeting needs? If you don't provide business value, if you're not solving pain that they're experiencing, well, you're probably going after the wrong account. So I think account selection is first and foremost critical. Encouraging a team to collaborate on whether it's a template or a plan where you're looking at the organization that you're targeting and understand, first of all, what is the business value? Do you clearly understand it? Who are those people within the organization that will benefit the most from what you're providing? Understanding sort of the politics of the organization, understanding just what they're trying to achieve, I think is incredibly helpful. Today, we struggle with longer sales cycles. We're seeing more and more people involved in the buying committee. Deals are taking way longer. So if you don't understand each of those personas, what motivates them, it's going to be incredibly difficult to take a deal from start to finish.
So, Sam, it sounds like Howard took the tact of saying strategic planning in the construct of the actual sales process and understanding your customer and understanding their, both the psychographics, demographics associated with it, the 6 to 7 players that they now say are inside of every deal, and maybe even more than that now since budgets have been cut. What are you
Can I get more
seeing there?
tactical?
Yeah,
Let
please.
me. I'm a product guy, so I sometimes make the mistake of maybe let's get a little bit too tactical into the machine.
Fair enough.
I think there's, I'll use an A word here, which sounds like consulting speak, but it's not. Bear with me. Alignment.
Okay.
So if you look at 3 different components in a sales journey, the what are you selling, who are you selling to, and like how are you selling it? I think you'd be shocked at certainly how many early stage companies, but even how many growth stage companies don't have alignment between those 3 pieces. And so when you get a misalignment, then the gears are not working well. So for example, take the ACV. The way you sell something for 6K a year versus 60 versus 600, totally different processes, like totally different.
Yeah.
From PLG to inside sales to field sales and negotiated contracts. That needs to align with the thing you're selling. If you're selling a heavyweight, heavy solution intensive, requires lots of touch solution at a 6K ACV, you don't have alignment, that's not going to work well. And vice versa. And then also it has to align with who your ICP is. Who are they and how do they want to buy? Are you selling at the executive level, or are you selling at the manager level, or are you selling to an individual contributor? None of these is better. They're just different. And so if you have misalignment, if you're trying to sell 600K deals to individual contributor using a high touch process, none of this plan will work. And so I think there's a base layer, which a lot of companies don't get right, is like, look at the thing we're selling. What is the natural ACV for it? What should be the right way to sell this? And also look at who is our ICP. You should have 2, not 17. And figure out
why is that, Sam?
Target.
Why not 17?
Because if you focus on everything, then you have no focus.
Absolutely.
Right. Strategy is my opinion. Strategy. One way to define strategy is what you are choosing not to do. That allows you to do fewer things better. And so by picking fewer ICPs, you can say, okay, we are going to design a process that works for the manager level buyer, not the executive, not the individual contributor. We're going to figure out how to get a target ICP of a manager to understand our product, our solution. And then you can define the way you speak and the assets and everything you have for communicating with that buyer.
It's all about narrowing the aperture. Howard, you've had 3 exits. How does this change as you move from seed stage, couple founders, some folks in product, maybe founder-led sales, to developing a sales team, to getting to the point where, you're ready for some sort of an exit? How does this concept of strategic planning change, and what are the elements that are more and more critical to look at as you scale your organization?
Well, hopefully through the three organizations that I've founded, I've made a tremendous amount of mistakes along the way. And hopefully I recognize the mistakes early on, and bring those experiences and the benefit of those mistakes into the next company. So I would say, look, it's important that you start with the right strategy, with the right plan in place from the very beginning. So Sam talked about ICP. Within an ICP, you're sort of understanding the organizations that you're targeting. Underneath that are the personas. You have to understand the human beings that are involved in the buying process as well as the ICP. So if I'm selling to an organization because, for example, it's financial services and they're trying to develop better high touch with their customers, I have to understand the challenges that they face at the wealth manager level, at their leadership level. All of the various problems that exist within that ICP boils down to the individual level. And if we speak to what each individual is trying to achieve, what is the better vision of a sales leader? What is the better vision that a wealth manager has of themselves. Really understanding each of those personas, that helps shape the product, develop the product, your go-to-market strategy, your prioritization, because again, you're selling to a buying committee. You're not just selling to a company. There are multiple stakeholders involved in most decisions today. Sure, there's smaller ones, PLG, where you're specifically trying to target a user, provide some value, and then give them more along the way. But for an enterprise or mid-market sale, there's a lot of people involved. Truly understanding the individuals, not just the business acumen around the industry, I think is critical.
Sam, what do you say to the people who are sitting there listening to us and they're thinking, all right, yeah, that's great, guys. I'm running this company and I've just lived through COVID. I'm trying to make my way through an inflationary economy, which might be borderline recession, in spite of whatever the Fed may or may not be doing right now. And I'm trying to manage my runway and deliver. And I don't have time for strategic planning. You're a product guy. Products are built with an agile methodology. It's all about quick sprints and testing on those sprints and iterating. Why doesn't sales just do that? What do we need the strategic planning thing for?
Let's take the emotion out of this for a second. Take away the planning word, because I think there's a lot of like, oh God, planning.
Yeah.
Think of this just as you've got a sales machine and you want to make sure that your machine is running smoothly and effectively so you can get more out of it. And so part of doing that is making sure that the gears are meshing and they're not getting gunked up. And so you got to look at each piece of your machine and make sure that it's aligned, that you've got roles and responsibilities of the people in this whole thing defined clearly. You've got transparency and clarity around handoffs and expectations for each of the roles, accountability on what they're each supposed to be doing. But then also you've got like macro level stuff, like, do we have the price point set right for the person we're selling to and for the type of solution that we're providing? Like all of these things are part of the machine. And if you don't get that stuff right, the machine's not going to run as well as you want it to. So like, no matter what the macro economy is, you want to get, like, the reason we're on this call is because we want to get we're trying to learn how to get a sales machine that runs better. You mentioned Scrum. So let me maybe hit on that.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, I came from the build side. Building software, coding is a naturally flow-based system. Modern development teams artificially chop it up into Scrum sprints.
Correct.
Okay, like often 2-week sprints. The reason they artificially impose this structure is for one specific purpose. It's for iterative improvement.
Yeah.
It's so that at the end of every 2-week sprint, you have an opportunity to basically look back and say, okay, what did we like and what didn't we like? And then what are we going to change? That's the reason why you do it, because it's actually a lot of headache and it's a lot of overhead. Here's the crazy thing. On the go-to-market side of the house, we don't have to artificially put in cycles. We have natural cycles, months, quarters, they're there already. We're gifted with them. So I think a key thing as a leader, as a go-to-market leader, is to use the cycles that we already have, months and quarters, and use them for iterative improvement. Because there's few things in this world that can resist the inexorable pressure of continuous improvement, constantly getting better and better and better over time.
Yeah, I would add the planning word, right? Like the negativity around planning versus just execution. But I think Sam at the beginning nailed it when he said, it's figuring out what you're not going to do. That's a big part of strategy, right? So if I can focus and I can get my team to focus on what they need to be doing, and then I have the machinery that optimizes the performance against every single engagement, every part of that sales process, then we can just go. The idea is to use technology to improve through every single interaction, every engagement. Hopefully you are learning, you are growing, and you can implement that strategy into the machine and get better results every single time. And that's where the power of technology today and AI is so powerful to help execute those strategies.
Let's get tactical about that, Howard. I like that you took us there. So, Sam talked quite a bit about the idea of roles and responsibilities, and that the roles and responsibilities exist. And then he correlated those to the operation of a slick and well-oiled machine. Speak really specifically about what that machine looks like and whose role. And when I say who, I don't necessarily want to pin it on one person's head, but what kind of purview must one have? Who do you want to have involved in the conversation around this level of strategy, knowing that they're still executing with the cogs and the works of the machine? How does that actually come into play in an organization? What does it look like?
Absolutely. So if the organization decides this is the ICP we're going after, the marketing team is tasked with truly understanding the pain, the situation that segment is challenged with, the fit. How does our technology or service fit into addressing that pain, developing that content, understanding who are the best targets that we should be going after, because you can't take a shotgun approach. So think about ABX. What are the accounts we should be focused on? They work with the RevOps team, hopefully, to identify what accounts exist, what contacts do we have, who are those personas, and they enter that into whatever system you are using. Then you engage in a strategy of outreach. How are we going to contact those individuals? Are those contacts the right individuals? Are we delivering the right messaging? Can we test and measure that messaging? Are we reaching out? Are we calling them? Are we reaching out on LinkedIn? Are we listening to every conversation? Are we evaluating every email, every LinkedIn message to understand what is working and what isn't? We're all about real time. So literally driving execution in the moment. You and I are talking, we're on this podcast. Am I saying the right things? Am I answering your questions in the right way? Are you challenging me with things that I cannot answer as a new sales rep? Do I have that information readily available to answer your challenges? And then test and measure. If it's not working, how do we change directions? How do we refocus? And how do we make sure that every part of the organization is set up so if I have a conversation with these 3 people at an organization and they bring additional people on, do I know what has occurred in that account before? Because buyers today need a great buying experience. We all talk about the selling experience. Think about the buyer. People aren't professional buyers. They have needs, and their needs are they need sellers to deliver valuable experiences that help them with their buying experience.
Howard, you make the relationships between these departments sound so naturally supportive of one another. And in reality, Sam, there's often a conflict between sales and marketing. Sometimes there's that word alignment that you mentioned before that's off. Sometimes there's just down to tactical execution. And often there's some finger pointing. What is the point at which there's healthy conflict, right, which creates some success for the entire organization, versus what you might want to call, bureaucracy and dysfunction that becomes stagnant?
Yeah, one of the acid tests I like is if you remove the departments, the notion of sales versus marketing versus customer success. If you remove those boundaries, those boxes, what you have is a go-to-market machine that should be working all in step. So you kind of have a flow, right? From customer becoming aware, coming in, first conversation with them, standard sales stages, them signing, making a successful customer out of them. If you kind of come down to don't go to the executive level to answer your question.
Okay.
Go down to like the IC level. So if you're on this call, you have AEs, right? Otherwise, right? You've got a sales team. You're not going to be on this call if you don't have a sales team. All right. So you've got sales AEs. You may have BDRs, depending on what kind of machine you've designed. And if so, then you need to look at what's your BDR to AE ratio? How are they assigned? You probably also have a way of getting pipeline into those BDRs, but kind of maybe not, depending on how marketing. Are they doing account-based marketing, or they do more traditional inbound marketing? And then after the AE, you might have expansion account managers or not. Expansion might be owned by the AE. If you do have expansion managers in your machine, you need to think about how long does the AE own it before it gets handed off to expansion and which accounts. And then also after that, you probably have CSMs, which are responsible for onboarding. But then you need to ask yourself, okay, where is the renewal? Who owns the renewal and who owns the expansion? So getting back to your question, if you have tension between marketing and sales and CS, remove those notions, remove those boxes, and instead think about a continuous flow with individual contributors doing different parts of a flow that all needs to work together. And then where you want to box it, whether or not you want to draw the boundaries so that BDRs are inside of marketing or outside of marketing, it really comes down to the maturity of your executives and what their individual skill sets are.
Can I just add, I think it's really important, look, getting more tactical. The best organizations I see today are those that are working towards that RevOps alignment. So obviously you need the data, right? The data needs to exist through marketing, sales, CS support. That needs to happen. But if you don't align the organization around the right KPIs, everybody has their individual. Marketing has KPIs for leads, and sales is, opportunities. Align the organization around shared KPIs. You see that alignment work much better, much faster. So rather than everybody having their vanity metrics that they're trying to fulfill and show off, come up with a core group of metrics, right? Like, who is responsible for pipeline? It's everybody. Everybody's responsible. And win rates and revenue. Like, start to align the organization around some basic shared KPIs, and you start to see alignment happen a lot faster. At least that's been my experience.
So let's, in the spirit of this campfire, let's put some fire under folks who might just be sitting and nodding and taking all this in anecdotally. What is a litmus test? What is something that you could challenge someone to think through in their organization, Howard, with respect to, should they be doing something differently today? What does it look like when it's poorly executed? What shows up? What are some indicators, some yellow or red flags that one might be experiencing today?
Yeah, so your reps aren't ramping fast enough. Your win rates are awful. You don't have enough pipeline. I mean, these are the obvious things. And I think, look, everybody's experiencing a weakened pipeline today. Everybody is experiencing longer sales cycles, right? But what are you doing to improve it right now? How are you aligning teams right now, rather than what I see in some dysfunctional organizations, which is a lot of finger pointing? The finger pointing does not work. So sit down with your combined teams, focus on what you're going to do together, what is working and what is not. This is a brilliant opportunity to actually test and measure everything. Stop, focus, look at what you're executing upon, and really, look, there's less deals happening. That's just the bottom line. There are less deals happening right now. So it actually gives you a little bit of time to be introspective. Look across your organization. Is there shared data? Are there shared KPIs? Where should we focus? Start simple. Start on some shared KPIs.
Yeah. Hey, Sam, all three of us are co-founders of technology companies, and we've talked quite a bit about the tactical execution of a sales process and identifying ICP and being able to run your organization effectively from a management perspective. Where does tech figure into this whole equation right now?
Tech is an enabler to all of it. The environment that we're competing in, well, let me hit that two ways. We're often selling tech, right? So that's an obvious thing, right? The actual thing that we're selling and the competition we're up against is a constantly changing landscape. So, for example, you might be, a year ago, you were probably not selling something with AI, and probably now you are in some way. Separately from the thing you're selling itself, the machine that you're designing is constantly improving through technology, regardless of whether you're selling, software or cars. Okay, and so examples of how the machine could be improving are greater tracking and analytics throughout the sales process. there's a lot more data available. There's a lot more data available for a sales leader now than there was 10 years ago. Another example is the company Reprise that I lead right now. It's been historically painful for sales teams to demo their technology. And so being able to encapsulate product so that a sales and marketing team can control their own demo is a huge leap forward. So I'd say, to answer your question, it's happening on both sides and will never stop.
Will never stop. So this idea of more data available, are there new roles, Howard, that you think are going to be critical to the sales function? You've talked quite a bit about RevOps and revenue intelligence. Are there some things that you think, as we move down this path towards greater technology and automation and the availability of data, sales teams are going to want to involve in a strategic planning process that we aren't necessarily doing today?
Well, look, I've been talking about data for, it feels like 2 decades, and we have an abundance of data, and we have data coming in from a wide swath of individual tools, point solutions. And I don't want to turn my sales organization into data scientists. I don't think any of us do. And I don't want to turn my sales leaders into data scientists either. I think what we're starting to see is a consolidation of these individual tools to provide better insights. Because at the end of the day, it's not about data. It's taking that data and providing just-in-time insights. What should I do now and what should I do next? And that's the power of a platform today. It's taking all of the data and it's doing all of the hard data science work behind the scenes. Look, we could talk about hiring a lot of data scientists or AI people. I met with the CTO of AWS, machine learning and AI. He literally told me he has more open recs than those graduating from master level data science roles across the world right now. So we're all facing a shortage of data science and AI people. We need to find tools that do the work for us. That's why I'm so excited about what we're seeing is a consolidation of tools, a consolidation of data to provide those insights and that guidance to really help our reps and our managers. Because look, we always forget about the manager. We always forget about the sales leader. It's always about what are we going to do for the rep? Managers aren't taught to coach. We need to think about how to make them great leaders, how to make them great coaches. Where should they focus their attention? That's what technology's for today. It's to optimize everybody's performance, from the sales rep to the sales manager to the sales trainer to the coach. We have to think about all these roles and how to use these technologies to provide insights and next best action across the entire organization. And if you're doing it by getting a bunch of data scientists to throw data in a lake and throw more dashboards at you, you're going to miss the mark.
You've mentioned also this idea of optimizing time and how sales rep time is critical, how time for sales managers and where they're allocating their time to their greatest impact is important. Is this kind of the direction you're going with?
100%. It's all about focusing people on the highest impact activity. So if a sales rep should be talking to somebody and should be engaging in certain types of conversations, optimize their time and point them in that direction. If a sales manager, their job is to work on deals, how do you optimize performance around a deal review? How do you make sure that they have the right questions, the right focus on what worked before in the playbook? Are we automating that and notifying the manager, look, this rep needs help right now. What are you going to do about it? And coaching the manager along to help them through the situation as well.
Sam, you look like you're about to jump in with something.
Yeah, there's an interesting trend we're seeing in the market right now, which is, in my opinion, not a good one for sales organizations. I had a customer of mine describe it as leftward drift. If you can imagine, like the sales flow from early stage to moving through the stages, the sales progression. Leftward drift is sales engineers being required earlier and earlier, left and leftward, in that sales process.
Yeah.
And so instead of sales engineers coming on for a late stage POC, they're increasingly being used early in the process, like for the first call demo. And that's hard because not just because sales engineers are expensive, but they're also very hard. It's very hard to scale an organization. If you're designing a machine, having an element like sales engineers be involved in first call demos makes it very hard for you to scale that machine. And so back to your question about technology and designing this machine, you need to think very carefully about how do you architect things so that people are they're being used in the most effective and efficient way for what their talents are.
With respect to resource planning, what are your thoughts, Sam, on this trend, largely sparked by COVID with respect to remote work, and then we've kind of moved towards hybrid work. Now it seems that a lot of companies and a lot of individuals actually are wanting to get back into the office. How does this tie into that strategic resource planning motion that's essential for the development and growth of an organization?
It's an excellent question. I think if the business world had that answer, we'd be in a much better place. I think all organizations from small to big are trying to navigate what's the landscape of home work, how is this migrating, what's it going to be like in 1 and 3 and 5 years.
What are you doing at Reprise?
We were started 2021 in March of 21. So we were started basically right after full lockdown happened in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So we started remote. But I will say that while there's some things I love about remote, like the ability to tap into pools of people and talent that you could not otherwise normally reach for, it does have its drawbacks. In particular, I think it's very hard for humans. When you walk into a normal office, you have peripheral vision, you peripheral awareness. Even if you're a sales team, as you walk in, you might be walking past the engineering team.
Yeah.
And you see that they're all huddled around a monitor and they're all super excited about a new launch. You might peripherally hear other reps around you giving demos, and you might pick up little phrases that they use that you might want to incorporate in yours.
Absolutely.
The problem is when we do Zooms now at home, everything is tunnel vision. There's no peripheral awareness. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's healthy for an organization. I don't think we as humans, as maybe even at like an animal level, I don't think we're designed to have everything be tunnel vision. I think we get, at a base level, like discomfort at not having awareness of our people around us. And so I think we will need to figure something out. And as to what that is, gosh, I don't know.
Howard, how do you create that cross-functional harmony if you are either hybrid or remote organization? To Sam's point, the tunnels, the boxes, the one thing that I talk about a lot is the formality of Zoom. You're in a specific little box on the calendar, and then you're in this box in front of somebody else, and you get to the meeting at hand, you share a few pleasantries, and you move on to the next one. But to your point, those incidental interactions don't occur, which often create that kind of esprit de corps in an organization where it's like, yeah, I got friends all over the org. How do you do that sort of a thing in today's world?
It's not easy. And to Sam's point, I mean, we are humans, meaning we're social beings, right? The connectivity is critically important. We've built applications that obviously allow for sharing, allow for emotion detection, allow people to review things that other people have done and said and what has worked. But I will tell you, thinking about the SCs, since it's an important part of Sam's organization, Reprise, to me, sitting in an office and having my sales engineering and my SDRs and my A's and my product teams together, and hey, what do you think about this? And looking over and grabbing someone and solutioning together or whiteboarding, there is no replacement for that.
None.
That is incredibly powerful. I do think a lot of roles are changing, right? That because there's so much technology today and so many different needs across the organization. To Sam's point, does everybody need tons of SEs? I don't know. I see the SE role actually changing. When I think about, again, the buyer, the SE is intimately involved with buyers and solutioning and that sort of thing. I value an SC in well beyond the sale or well beyond the initial sale. I think that SE has a lot of the knowledge that's needed for implementation. They've set up the demo. They understand the business need. They've worked along the AE. And then in a lot of organizations, they just kick that over somehow to implementation or CS. If the SE understands all that, why not work in collaboration with the implementation team, with the CS team? And I think that figuring out where those transition points are, how people can collaborate in different ways is critically important in this new environment.
Yeah. You know, I'm imagining someone's listening and they're inspired and they have been ignited and they are now going to go off and attempt to achieve some of these elements of alignment and some of these pieces around creating process and creating some sort of a feedback loop. What does, Sam, the memorialization of this process look like? You know, I'm coming to you because you're the product guy and you're good at that iterative, that iterative motion. And if I'm looking at this and I want to capture information, gather folks together, right? Have some sort of a document or planning device, for lack of a better term, that comes out of this, and then revisit it for impact. Talk a little bit about what somebody in an executive role should be looking to create coming out of a conversation like the one we're having.
It sounds like you're looking for a document.
Maybe. Is it?
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I think I think there's a tendency to try and document in particular processes. And I think the problem is that there's a lot of complexity and detail to a process as complex as a go-to-market motion in everything from marketing through sales to post-sales. And so I think the risk is that if you try and memorialize it, document it, nail it down, I think you're going to naturally not be able to reflect the inherent level of detail needed to get it right. So I think it's a temptation, and that's one risk. And then the second risk is that by documenting it, you're hardening it. And I think that's actually the opposite direction of that you as a leader want from continuous improvement. So I think that perhaps an alternate approach here to answer your question would be to identify and clearly communicate the salient anchor points, which might be KPIs we need to hit. What are the handoff points between roles? What is the definition of when a lead moves to an op? Essentially, the identify the corners, but not try and paint the whole picture. Because when you try and paint the whole picture, you're removing your team's ability to have flexibility to get that right and better over time.
Great advice, Sam. Howard, I'm going to give you the last word here. And here's my question to you, since you selflessly offered up the fact that you've made some mistakes before. So if you could pick out a couple things that you're going to save someone from having to encounter themselves, some pitfalls that one might encounter in this process, what would you share with somebody?
Be open to making mistakes yourself and celebrate the mistakes as quickly as possible so that you can move on. Because if you're beating yourself up, you're probably not learning the lesson of the mistake you just made. So celebrate those mistakes with your team, be open and honest, and have fun.
I love it. Sam, any final words before we go?
I think maybe one thing is we've talked a lot about the high level stuff. I think there's no replacement for a leader getting down into the weeds occasionally. Like pull the thread all the way through the machine and like inspect the individual deal. Because regardless of all the discussion we do about planning and machines and everything else, if it doesn't work at the atomic level, then it's not going to work at scale. And so you as a leader occasionally remove everything we've talked about on this call and just go look at the one single deal and make sure that it's happening right at the atomic level.
I love that. The atomic level. Howard, last thought?
Boom.
Boom! Speaking of the atomic level, well done. All right. I want to thank both Sam Clemens from Reprise and Howard Brown from Revenue.io. This has been Igniting Growth through Strategic Planning and Cross-Functional Harmony. I'm Hillman Sori, MSP. Thanks so much, Camp Modern Sales. Thank you, folks, for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Hillman.